Hello, my name is Phil, and I'm doing a series of videos called English Videos for You, all related to English subjects, okay? I'm an English teacher. My last video, I did something about presentations. I did how to do presentations. I gave you a series of points about presentations. If you haven't seen that video, it would be very good to see it. Now I want to carry on with this series about how to do presentations, and I'm going to give you some practical examples, some practical things to say. On my first video I explained different points to take into consideration, and now I want to do it as if I were doing a presentation. Introducing a typical business presentation. Remember, in my last video I said always arrive early, always arrive as early as possible. Now, how early? That is the big question. How early? Depends where you're going. Obviously, if you're giving a presentation in your own company, in the office, you don't have to be there hours and hours before. But if you're going somewhere, particularly somewhere you don't know, make sure you get there as early. Talk to the organizers. Maybe you have to set up the microphone. Maybe you have to set up your computer. Maybe you have to set up different things. So get there early. When you're introduced, remember I'm talking about formal business presentations, but of course you can use this, as I said last time. You can use this if you're doing a presentation at school. And if you have a microphone, walk up to the microphone, pick it up in your hand, and then you have one of your hands taken up with your microphone, and the other hand you can use to demonstrate things. You get a little bit closer to your audience and look around from side to side at them. If you imagine you're giving a presentation in a large hall, well, look around you, look at everybody. Make sure you try to cover everybody. Speak reasonably slowly to start with, taking your time to calm any nerves. Now, maybe you're nervous. It's normal. Sometimes people get very nervous when they give presentations in front of hundreds or thousands of people. It's normal. And sometimes people get nervous when they're speaking in front of a camera. I have been doing a few English videos now, and every time I'm less nervous. I'm losing this fear of speaking in front of a video camera. Most people get nervous at one point when they're speaking in front of people. Don't worry. Start speaking slowly and clearly. Good morning. Before I start my presentation, I would like to thank you all very much for coming today, and especially those of you who've traveled a long way to be here. I also like to say a big thank you to Mr. or Mrs. or Miss, whoever it is, and the conference organizers for arranging the conference center and the hotel. And finally to Mr. Jones, maybe a point to Mr. Jones, for example, for inviting me to speak to you all today. Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. Okay, I'm just giving you some ideas about what you do when you do a presentation. So maybe you're doing a university presentation, it's not a business presentation. You could say, well, thank you to my teachers, whoever has asked you, and thank you for coming. Now we're introducing ourselves. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Phil. I'm a teacher working in academies. I'm also doing telephone classes, and I'm also doing video classes. But if you were doing this, you would say, for those of you who don't know me, you say your name, your title, a job title. I'm in charge of an area, or I'm in charge of a function, and I have been working for them since the year 2000, for example, since 2000, or for 18 years. Don't forget, I've been working for them since a specific time, since the year 2000 or since the year 2010, and four is a period of time, okay, for 1 week. 5 years, for 10 years. Moving on. Let me briefly run through what we'll be looking at in more detail today. As you can see from my index, and here we point up to the index, okay, if you have an index, I'll be analyzing, say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 6 different points, or 3 different points. After that, the organizers have allocated 10 to 15 minutes for any questions, which I'll be very happy to answer. Now don't forget, prepare those questions. Maybe people at the end of the presentation are going to ask you some questions. Prepare possible questions and possible answers. Think about the questions they're going to ask you and think about that. Prepare those questions. We'll be splitting up into working groups to discuss these issues, which I'm talking about, in more detail. Sometimes as working groups. Let's move on to our next point. What I want to do now is give you some pointers, some things about what you say in the presentation. Things like this. As I think you are all reasonably familiar with our products, with our services, for example, moving on to our next point. As you can see from the graph, so you can have a graph here, as you can see, sales rose slightly, so we have rise, rose, risen, slightly, sharply, if it goes very quickly, However, there was a dramatic drop, as you can see from the graph, or as you can see from my slide, or as you know, things went up, things went down, sharply, slowly, dramatically. Then we can say things like, taking into account what we learned last year from our market research survey. Well, let's look at a practical example of this. Well then, if you're coming to the end, you say, well, that brings us to our last point. And then you say, I'd like to summarize by drawing your attention to the following. Remember in my last one about presentations, I talked about having a summary, having different points, no? And you summarize. And then in concluding, I'd like to mention this, I'd like to draw your attention to this. And then, well, if anybody has any questions, I'd be very happy to answer them. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this video. This is just to give you some points about how to do presentations, some things to think about. And I hope you find it useful. If you did, please put a like, subscribe, tell your friends, your colleagues about these videos, okay? Thank you very much. Thanks, bye.